Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, it's time to look at the top 5 decks in the Pokemon trading card game right now. Now, when I say right now, I am talking about with Battle Styles legal. So Battle Styles is out now. It's going to be legal very, very soon. And when it's legal, these are what I consider to be the top 5 decks in the game. Now, at this stage, I do want to remind you there was a 2,000-person tournament, I believe, in Taiwan. So we do have some data on this particular format. So even though some of the things I say might go against the pre-Battle Styles format, please do remember we have had a giant competition that has happened with Battle Styles legal, and I am basing it on what was happening before Battle Styles, but also what has happened since Battle Styles became legal. Essentially, when we get to the global finals of the Players' Cup, free, and delighted that I'm going to be on the commentary team for that broadcast, because I love commentating Pokemon. This is what I expect to see. Now, there are a couple of decks I do want to shout out because I'm not putting them on the list, but man, they came close. One that I desperately want to put on the list, but I'm not quite ready yet, is Centiskorch VMAX with Porygon Z. Now, Centiskorch VMAX is a deck I did a video on a little while ago. This actually got top 4 at this giant tournament in Taiwan, and I am really, really hoping that by the time we get to the global finals of the Players' Cup, and we watch that all play out, however it does, it hasn't happened yet, but I'm hoping that when that happens, people will look back on this list and go, Wassy, how could you possibly leave Cramorant VMAX off? It's way too good. That is my hope, ladies and gentlemen, because I love this deck. And the deck itself is fairly straightforward. Cramorant VMAX does 80 damage for each heads you can flip, and you're allowed to flip 1 coin for each energy attached to it. So you play around with stuff like triple acceleration energy, which counts as free energy, and recycle energy that goes back to your hand when it's discarded from play, and use Glimwood Tangle to give yourself a second chance at those flips. And you just try KOing anything, because of course Porygon Z lets you attach as much special energy during your turn as you like. It is one I am very, very excited about. I hope it's great. And of course, you still get the benefit of Cramorant. And there's 2 great things about Cramorant. First of all, you hit 160 to the bench. That's enough to KO a Dedenne. Bearing in mind you can use Porygon Z to power it up. And you have to discard all the energy, but if you use recycle energy, it bounces back to your hand, so you're fine. And then Beat Catch will let you search your deck for any 2 cards and put them into your hand. So go second, turn 1, grab a rare candy and a Porygon Z, and force your opponent to have something like a Marnie, or you've got that turn 2, stage 2. Don't sleep on Beat Catch being a great thing for this deck. Centiskorch is another deck which I wanted to put on this list and has seen a fair bit of success and it's seen a lot of play, but it's never quite been that proper, like, top of the format deck. At the Players' Cup 2, we saw it represented, but there was only 1 in top 16, and it came in joint 9th. It did fine, but it didn't set the world on fire, pun intended. There was 1 in the top 16 of this tournament in Taiwan, and it did make top 8, but there was only 1 of them in there, so I'm not quite ready yet to anoint this as the best deck in the format. And this is a fairly straightforward deck. You've got Centiskorch VMAX, which you pile energy on, and you smash. You do 40 damage base plus 40 more for each energy attached to it. You use Welder to accelerate energy, you use Volcanion to accelerate energy, as well as using it as a good non-GX attacker. And if you deal any damage with the attack, you also get to attach a fire energy from your discard pile to Centiskorch. And then you basically run through anything. Heatran GX becomes an absolute must-play for its big GX attack. It's got an ability that lets you move all your energy over to it, and then it does 50 damage for each energy on it. 1 big smash to finish out the game, basically. And it's just a decent 130 for free energy attacker. I like Center Scorch, and it can absolutely make waves and it can one-hit KO anything, but it doesn't quite make the list. Similarly, Mewtwo and Mew, and again, Mewtwo and Mew is always there or thereabouts. It is always either one of the top decks or right on the periphery of it. It's got Perfection, which allows you to copy the attacks of any of your GXs in play or in the discard pile. And you can play a fire deck with Welder or a water deck with Frostmoth, and you can play a whole different variety of attackers when you're playing it. I just think if we take a little bit of a look, you know, the Players' Cup 2, it didn't really get represented at all. That's a lie. There was, well, kind of. There was kind of a joint knife with Owen Johnson. It was a Lightning Mewtwo and Mew playing Boltund, which is another way to play it. And I suppose we can count that as a Mewtwo and Mew deck. The other thing is, if I put this on the list, where do I put it on the list? And what version of it do I play? And the answer is, I'm not entirely sure. But it did show up in Taiwan. There was one that came around with Rillaboom, of all things, playing Grass Energy. So bear this in mind, it's definitely there, but I'm not entirely sure the best way to play it right now, and I'm not sure it's as good as any of the decks I'm going to show you right now. And I'm going to have to actually interrupt my former self right there. Wassy from a few days ago, you've made a mistake, sir. You see, I've just told you how Mewtwo and Mew didn't quite make the top 5. Frankly, ladies and gentlemen, that was dumb. You see, there was a 1,600-person tournament in Japan this weekend, which was won by Mewtwo and Mew. And our friend the lovely Antoine Boulet got a top 4 finish with Mewtwo and Mew. So frankly, ladies and gentlemen, yes, Mewtwo and Mew is one of the top 6 decks in the format. Let's make this a top 6 video and say that Mewtwo and Mew is very much there. Turns out the best build is the Welder build. That means that you are accelerating energy and drawing cards using the supporter card Welder. And then you're using all kinds of cards. You've got things like Vileplume that for 2 energy does 180 if you've got no damage on you. Naganadel that can do 170 to the bench, perfect for KOing a Dedenne. Charizard GX with the 4 energy 300 GX attack, which is pretty gosh darned awesome. Mega Lopunny and Jigglypuff that punishes your opponent for playing too many GXs. Obviously Reshiram and Charizard and all those great attacks there. And maybe even, the winning deck played Gengar and Mimikyu, allowing you to do 50 damage for each trainer card your opponent has in their hand. Great as an emergency option or to punish your opponent for having a large hand. Turns out Mewtwo and Mew very much is one of the top 5 decks in the format. So let's just say I've issued my correction here. I still think that 5 decks I'm about to show you are great and brilliant and deserving of their place on the list. That hasn't changed. But leaving Mewtwo and Mew off the top 5 list, that was dumb, Wassy. That was dumb. So I'm not putting these in any kind of order, but we might as well start off with the old favourite, Zacian ADP. And this is one of those decks where until somebody proves to me otherwise, I am just going to assume it is one of the very best decks around. At least until rotation, when we lose ADP, and at that point it actually will go away. ADP's got the phenomenal GX attack, Creation GX, that says for the rest of the game, all of your attacks do an extra 30 damage. And for the rest of the game, every time you take a KO, you take an extra prize. And it gets silly to the point where you basically just use boss's orders twice on something like Dedenne or Crobat, and that's it. That's literally your 6 prizes to win the game. It gets a little bit silly. Plus, you've got an attack which will accelerate free energy while doing damage, and you'll notice that after using your GX attack, that is enough to KO a Dedenne or a Crobat, which seems pretty gosh darned relevant to me. Then, of course, you've got Zacian, who just does 230 damage. Except it's 260, except we've now got Rusted Sword, which will put it up to 290. And as you've been seeing from the Pokemon that have been going up on the screen during this video, 290 is enough to get a one-hit KO on Tag Team Pokemon. Plus, you've got an ability that lets you essentially draw 3 cards and end your turn. But if any of them are metal, you can attach them to Zacian. And you've got Metal Saucer as well. So between ADP's attack, your ability, Metal Saucer, etc., you are not going to struggle to get the energy on here. And then you're one-hit KOing tag teams for 4 prizes. And it really is the combination of pretty good energy acceleration, taking extra prizes, and one-hit KOs galore that makes me look at this deck and just go, it's just going to keep winning. It is that gosh darn good. And I wouldn't expect to see this going anywhere anytime soon. Also, I do need to mention, because one of my big things over the past year has been that ADP is always the most played deck, but never wins the big tournaments. Well, it won this 1,995 person tournament in Taiwan, so my ADP never wins the big tournament bit. I'm probably going to have to retire it now, because you know what? It just went and won the bigger tournament. Speaking of decks that will not go away, and I am going to have to be convinced before I put them as anything other than top deck in the format, Pikachu and Zekrom. Pikachu and Zekrom won the Players' Cup 2. Zach Lesage took it home. And it's just always there. And if we look at the Players' Cup 2, well, let's just say there were 5 Pikachu and Zekrom in the top 16. None of them came lower than top 8. They all made it into the top 8, including a mirror match in the final. Having said that, this tournament I'm telling you about in Taiwan, there was no Pikarom in top 16, which does make me think maybe, just maybe, Pikachu and Zekrom might be on the way out. Having said that, every time a new set comes out, people say that. It's never true, ladies and gentlemen. It's never true. Now, Pikachu and Zekrom itself is a little bit busted. Free energy, and you get to do 150 damage while accelerating free energy from your deck to one of your other Pokemon. And don't forget, we've got Tapu Koko Prism Star that will attach 1 energy to each of 2 bench Pokemon, and you can actually combine that with Energy Switch to get a turn 1 full blitz. It's not always that easy, but it is possible. Most of the time in the early game, you're going for Boltund with its Electrify attack, 1 energy, and you get to search your deck for 2 lightning energy and attach them to your bench Pokemon in any way that you like. Boltund also provides a very useful service because for a minimum 2 energy, you do 10 damage plus 30 for each lightning energy attached to all of your Pokemon. So essentially, you just pile energy on and smash, which seems like a good thing, personally. You've got Raichu and Alolan Raichu coming in as a little bit of a helper bot here, because you can do a bit of automatic paralysis while dealing damage, which is pretty gosh darn good. And certainly from about the time of the Players' Cup 2 onwards, this has seen a lot of Mewtwo and Mew. And we kind of have to play Mewtwo and Mew in here because you've got a weakness to fighting, and especially with one of the other decks coming up in a moment, you can't have a weakness to fighting right now. What Mewtwo and Mew does is, firstly, it gives you coverage of your weakness. Secondly, it allows you to hit that weakness, and again, the deck that hits you for weakness is weak to you. We'll get there in a moment. So you know what? Mewtwo and Mew seems like the kind of thing that absolutely has to be played. Now, a new deck which I'm putting on this list, and I might regret, so please yell at me in the comment section, is Rapid Strike Urshifu V Max. When I sat to make this list, I really thought about this for a very long time. It didn't make top 16 in Taiwan, though it came very, very close. But if you look at what other people are saying about the deck, and I've done a lot of my own testing, it really, really seems like a top-tier deck. I am willing to put this on my list of top 5 decks right now, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I feel pretty good about this. We do have the Pokemon V, but I really do think it is the V Max here that is the real star. For a single energy, you do 150 damage if you were on the bench and became active this turn. So make sure you were on the bench and became active this turn. And then you, for free energy, get to discard all energy attached to you and do 120 to each of 2 benched Pokemon. Sorry, Pokemon, benched or otherwise. And if there's a Dedenne in the active or a Crobat, you'll get a one-hit KO on them while hitting 120 to the bench. And you've got Rapid Strike Energy, which counts as any 2 energy, well, fighting or water, but it certainly works for all Rapid Strike Pokemon like this one. And then, even though you discard all the energy, you just go right back to doing 150 for a single energy. So you can pretty much alternate 150 for 1 energy, 122 of my opponent's Pokemon, and so on and so forth. Expect to see a lot more decks playing Mew in the near future to protect your bench. This is a very, very strong deck. Now, if you're playing a more standard version, you've got stuff like Octillery to give you a little bit of support. Searches out any Rapid Strike card. And don't forget, you've also got Empoleon V that will block abilities of basic non-rule box Pokemon, as in non-GX, non-V, etc., which is pretty gosh darn good. But there is a version that a lot of people seem to be favouring at the moment that plays Dragapult V Max. Now, the theory with Dragapult V Max is very simple. It hits Psychic Weakness while hitting the bench. So you're hitting opposing Urshifu for weakness while dropping bench damage, which of course combos beautifully with Urshifu V Max, doing bench damage. And yes, you're hyper weak to Eternatus, and that was the reason why Dragapult was the best deck in the format for 3 months, and then completely went away when Darkness Ablaze dropped. But Eternatus is weak to Urshifu. So if you are playing against Eternatus, you just ignore Dragapult and just play it like an Urshifu deck, and then you've actually got type advantage, not your opponent. I've seen a lot of players really gravitating towards the version with Dragapult, but I do think they are both absolutely viable options. But I think this deck is here to stay, and if I'm wrong, I will happily admit that I'm wrong, but I feel good putting this on my top 5 list. Eternatus VMAX, I mentioned it a moment ago, it's got to be on the list. Eternatus is a very big, very powerful, very good deck. If we look at the Players' Cup 2, it did see a little bit of representation. Didn't set it completely alight, but we did see it in the global finals. Over in Taiwan, Li Minghan did actually get second place with Eternatus. So this is very, very much a deck which is still here and still rocking. Now, Eternatus lets you have up to 8 bench Pokemon rather than the usual 5, and you deal 30 damage for 2 energy for each of your Darkness Pokemon in play. So a full bench of Darkness Pokemon, and you hit 270 damage. And basically, Eternatus just smashes. You fill up your bench, Crobat V becomes amazing because it's a draw engine that also means you do more damage. And then you fill up your bench and you just absolutely smash, and life is good. There's other tricksy things you can do. Galarian Zigzagoon fits beautifully in here. So you can use Scoop Up Net to try and make sure that you are taking KOs you shouldn't otherwise. Spiritomb becomes a really nice non-GX attacker. Use the ability to pile damage on it and then bring it up to take little KOs when you need to. But most of the time it is just pile Darkness Pokemon onto your bench and just run out and smash. I worry about it if the 2 Urshifu do become too prevalent, because there really isn't much of a backup plan. And certainly, we know that the next set, Chilling Reign, is going to bring in Galarian Zapdos, and Galarian Zapdos will basically end the deck. So, yeah, when Chilling Reign comes out, I feel pretty gosh darn confident that this ain't going to be on my top 5 list. But that's 3 months away, ladies and gentlemen. Right now, this makes my list. And the final deck I'm going to put on here is not one I expected to be putting on here, but I think it's time to accept that Inteleon is one of the top 5 decks in the format. Yes, I was surprised too. I didn't really want to buy Inteleon as a top 5 deck. It's never struck me as a top 5 deck. In the Players' Cup 1, Tord Reklev came in and got a top 4 finish, earning a paid invite to a future internationals using Inteleon. But I thought, it's a bit of a gimmick. People weren't prepared for it. It feasts on Center Scorch. I'm sure it's not really that good. But the thing is, this keeps happening. And I keep playing online and I keep facing it over and over again. And I think what has actually happened is I've just been a little bit slow on the ball in accepting this as a top deck. If we look at Taiwan, we saw 2 top 8 and a top 16 finish for Inteleon. 3 of the top 16 of this 2,000-person tournament were Inteleon. That is not nothing. It didn't rep in the Players' Cup 2, but it got a top 4 in the Players' Cup 1. And I really do think this is an absolute top-tier deck. Now, what we've basically got here is free energy, 160 to the active, and 60 to one of your opponent's bench. Not all lists, but a lot of lists do play it with Galarian, Zigzagoon, and Scoop Up Net, because there's so many 70 HP Pokemon like Galarian, Zigzagoon, but also stuff like Jirachi that you can absolutely feast on. And evolving decks have a really tough time here because as soon as they start trying to bench these little Pokemon, you just start KOing them while doing decent damage. And you use Frostmoth to accelerate your energy to Inteleon so you can start getting rolling really quite quickly. And I just think it's time to, and it's not really much more to it than that. You don't really see many other attackers. It is just Inteleon VMAX and smashing. We do see some lists playing Inteleon the non-GX, which does have a decent attack, 120 to the active, 20 to one on the bench, bearing in mind this is a bench-hitting deck generally, but that does also have the amazing ability that when you evolve into it, you get to search for any 2 trainer cards. Incidentally, Drizzile's got half of that. When you evolve into it, any 1 trainer card. And I think we've gotten to the point here where I just have to admit that yes, this is one of the top 5 decks in the format right now. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. With Battle Styles coming out, that is my look at the format. That's where I think we are. But as always, I'd love to hear from you guys. I'd love to know which decks you think don't deserve a place on this list, and which decks I didn't put on the list you thought I should have done. Though do remember the rule, if you're putting a deck on the list, you've got to take a deck off to make space. I don't want to hear these 20 decks should have been on the list. Take a deck out if you're going to put a deck in, ladies and gentlemen. It's only fair. Go nuts in the comment section, but be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.